President Volodymyr Zelensky's peace formula is the only realistic way to restore peace in Ukraine. Learn why this very good afternoon on UATV English, breaking hard truth in easy terms for the whole free world directly from Ukraine. Last weekend, high-ranked representatives of Ukraine in more than 40 countries met in Saudi Arabia to discuss the actual implementation of President Volodymyr Zelensky's peace formula. More information is emerging from the meetings every day, but one thing is clear for now. This summit, in general, was an important step towards securing a comprehensive, long-lasting and just peace in Ukraine. The peace formula is based on the simple and transparent key principles of the UN Charter and international law, as well on the thing that Russia lacks the most: respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity of countries within the international recognized borders, an only background for a just end to the war unleashed by Russia against Ukraine, and a universal basis for ending other conflicts across the globe. Ukraine will not give up on its territories. Well, you can say this is territories. Actually, we call it home. Would you give up on your home? That's what I thought. So any negotiations with Russia are possible, but only after the complete withdrawal of Russian troops from Ukrainian territory. Ukraine welcomes in any peace initiatives that adhere to two fundamental principles. They do not require Ukraine to make territorial concessions and do not result in freezing the conflict. In terms of a just and sustainable international peace and security order, Ukraine also advances its relations with African countries in the context of promoting political and economic interests of Ukraine. In Africa, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, Dmytro Kuleba, made first-ever official visits to the Republic of Equatorial Guinea and Republic of Liberia from July 23 to 26, 2023. Russia has not only unilaterally revoked guarantees for the operation of the grain corridor, but is also shelling the port infrastructure and grain elevators. This is an attempt to eliminate a competitor from the market and make money on speculative prices. As a result of this policy of the Kremlin, African countries are forced to pay many times more for food. We must put an end to Russian blackmail by joint efforts. Dmytro Kuleba, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, during visit to the Republic of Equatorial Guinea. Our African partners have been informed in detail of the Russian armed aggression against Ukraine and its devastating consequences, and even felt some on their own. While being in Kyiv, they remember well how Putin bombed the city to show his Russian hospitality to African leaders. It was noted by our African friends and partners, and now any peaceful plan to end hostilities must provide for the withdrawal of Russian troops from the entire territory of Ukraine. During the meetings, international efforts to maintain food security on the African continent were discussed, and the importance of resuming the unimpeded functioning of Black Sea grain corridor to continue exports of Ukrainian grain to Africa was also emphasized. Ukraine knows that the value of peace comes at a cost of war. We want to develop a new quality of partnership with African countries based on three simple principles: mutual respect, mutual interest and mutual benefits. Russia attempted to use the Summit of African Countries in St. Petersburg in July 2023 to restore degraded Putin's image and spread usual Kremlin's propaganda. Summit in St. Petersburg was also an attempt to justify Russia's attempt to weaponize all of it. Food, this time, falsely accusing the West of preventing Russian grain exports and fertilizers. Despite Moscow's long preparations and high expectations, summit has shown little success. Only 17 of 54 African countries were represented by heads of states. 5 countries ignored the invitation. African leaders have made it clear that Ukraine and Africa share deep historical ties. We have always shared and supported the aspirations of African nations towards independence and unity. Ukrainians are a nation that fights for its justice, against oppression and against human rights violation, for its life, future and freedom. Supporting is about respecting law and order and protecting the right of every nation to choose its own peaceful path of development, as simple as and as important as that. Ukraine is gradually, carefully and adequately fast advancing, destroying the enemy every day. If you think it is too slow, it is probably because the Ukrainian counteroffensive is proceeding according to the General Staff's plan, not yours. And its pace is entirely realistic given the heavily mined and fortified environment, as well as Ukrainians' lack of air superiority, remember?
Listening to Russia's remarks today, some might be confused about who is the aggressor and who is the victim. Since the beginning of Russia's brutal, full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the international community has been clear. Over 140 countries have repeatedly condemned the Russian Federation for its aggression against Ukraine and demanded that Russia withdraw its military forces from Ukraine's internationally recognized territory. We've listened carefully to Russia's remarks, and it's clear that its efforts to divert the Council's attention from the core issues at hand are a transparent ploy to distract from its own aggression.
So rather than asking when Ukrainian offensive will produce this or that result, we urge our partners to ask what else can be done to assist Ukraine's defense forces in carrying out their emergency missions. To that end, we require more demining equipment, air defense systems, artillery and ammunition, long-range missiles, including ATACMS, and armor vehicles. Of course, the Russians are making every effort to halt us on the battlefield. They have increased their offensive operations in Ukraine's east in order to tie our forces there and prevent us from deploying them in other directions. Russia has increased its attacks in Kupiansk and Liman directions, deploying a large number of troops, including professional airborne units. Even though difficult battles are being fought in those directions, Russia has been unable to advance. And one more thing, it's not accurate to count liberated kilometers when evaluating the performance of our army. To advance on battlefield, Ukraine's defense forces must perform a variety of tasks, including systematically degrading the enemy's defensive potential. Every day and night, our forces effectively destroy the enemy and its capabilities. The pressure on the Kremlin forces is increasing. Momentum and strategic initiative are in Ukraine's hands, and visible battlefield achievements are only a matter of time. The most important result is that Ukraine's forces are gradually advancing each and every day. While the enemy is simply being pushed away, our forces effectively plan, counter and destroy Russians. No doubt the main battle of Ukraine's 2023 offensive are yet to come, as are significant battlefield developments. So two things are crucial in this regard: patience and trust in Ukraine's ability to win. The current war's scale and intensity have not been seen since World War II. For example, the last Americans to witness such intensity of artillery fire, dense fortifications and length of front line were Americans on D-Day in Normandy. Similarly, no modern military analyst or experts have seen a war of this magnitude and intensity before. Thus, no analysis of the pace and dynamics of Ukraine's war effort is fully applicable to draw conclusions or make credible predictions on how the situation will evolve in the coming weeks or months.
We don't see any indicators that the support, the very real support, like weapons and ammunition needed for Ukrainian counteroffensive, is vanishing. No, it's not. We see the quite a sustainable effort. But what I also hear is that voices in the expert opinion and on some kind of parts of the political spectrum in those countries are asking questions and putting pressure on the governments. So are you sure this is the right thing to do to continue supporting Ukraine? Yes, this is happening, but the governments, at least as of now, they seem to be very committed to continuing their support. And this is exactly what we anticipated back in spring. I remember we had one conversation here. We realized that it would be happening exactly this way. If the counteroffensive does not produce immediate and unquestionable results, voices will begin to raise. But the key thing for us is to keep governments on track. And they are on track so far.
One thing is certain, we are determined to fight on and expel Russian invaders from our homelands. Since February 2022, Ukraine has surprised the world with its battlefield prowess and ability to defeat a seemingly much stronger adversary. We encourage partners and friends to view current operations with optimism and trust, just as we do in Ukraine. And one more little thing. Do you know any pessimists in history ever winning a large-scale war? And yes, we have our surprises for the enemy when Zelensky says so. Until then, please trust in us. The international community must further consolidate its efforts to ensure the continuation of grain exports from Ukrainian seaports. Ukraine continues to be a vital food security guarantor for many countries around the world. The Black Sea Grain Corridor, facilitated by UN and Turkey in 2022, has been ensuring the supply of Ukrainian agricultural products to countries in Middle East, Africa and Asia.
It is clear that when taking out of the market millions and millions of tons of grains, it is clear that, based on economic laws, that will lead to higher prices than the ones that would exist with the normal access of Ukrainian grains to international markets. And this increase of prices will be paid by everybody, everywhere, and namely by developing countries and by the vulnerable people in middle income and even developed countries. So it's not with a handful of donations to some countries that we correct this dramatic impact that affects everybody, everywhere.
On July 17, 2023, Russia withdrew from the Black Sea Grain Initiative and began attacking Ukrainian seaports. The grain infrastructure in Odessa region has suffered the most. As a result of numerous missile attacks on July 19, 2023 alone, 60,000 tons of agricultural products, which were planned to be sent to China, by the way, were destroyed. Disruption of export routes in the Black Sea causes problems for millions of people around the globe. The increase of global prices for wheat and sunflower oil is only the tip of the iceberg in terms of its negative consequences. We continue to work with the United Nations and Turkey to bring the Black Sea Grain Initiative back to track, because it is crucial to restore the sea route and lower global food prices. We're also working on using alternative routes to transport Ukrainian grain. Russia should not use food as a weapon, but of course it will, because terror is the Russian way. Unimpeded exports of Ukrainian grain will help a lot of countries to obtain the agricultural products they need at the price they can afford. We call on all countries affected to make clear to Russia that its hunger games and destructive behavior are simply unacceptable. And now it's time for more on UATV. You ask and we answer. The question by Patricia Rossini, 6924. Which parts of Russia are interested in leaving Russia? How could Russia look like in the future if that happens? Thank you very much for your question, Patricia. I'd love to answer it. So first, yes, a lot of colonized by Moscow nations will be glad to leave Russia. Let's discuss why. Because the time has come, you see. The Putin's professed Soviet operational system has become long outdated. Yes, Putin's Soviet. I made no mistake. Such yourself. In the USSR, a centralized system of power existed that controlled all aspects of social and private life of citizens. The authorities lied to the people through mass media in an industrial scale. State media, television, radio and newspapers were completely controlled by Communist Party and were used to spread the propaganda and ideology of the ruling regime. This allowed the authorities to maintain their image and control the population. Ringing any bells yet? Now let's discuss who. Namely, Bashkortostan, Tatarstan, the countries of Caucasus, are already getting ready to leave, bringing back indigenous languages, history, ways of life and culture. An interesting initiative by Ukrainian parliament member Oleg Dunda comes to my mind when I want to talk figures. The idea was to answer mine and Patricia's question by asking indigenous peoples themselves who want to leave Russia. Here was the result so far. On this online referendum, indigenous nations, once colonized by Soviet Russia, have been asked a simple question. Do you want to leave Russia and become free and independent? As you can see, there are 4.2 million people voted yes at the moment, and percentage is 56% for Chuvasha region, 72% for Karelia, 51% for Voronezh region, 58% for Belgorod region, and 74% for Novgorod. That is for now. But more to expect. Just Google League of Free Nations of Post-Russia and learn more if you like. The point I am trying to make in easy terms here, let us talk after Ukraine wins. Mark my words, Patricia, that number of 4.2 million people will rise at least tenfold. Amen to that. That was Henry Keane on UATV State Channel, wrapping up Hard Truth in Easy Terms for the whole free world directly from Ukraine. Ask us a question, don't hesitate, and we'll do our very best to answer it in our comments below. Like, comment and subscribe. Your opinion matters the most to us. That is all, folks. See you soon next week. Stay safe and tune for more.